I talked in another video about how in January of 2015, I had this kind of mind-blowing moment when I was listening to the 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem, and I really hung on to that idea of self-efficacy with all my might. And so about 9 months into this process, I had this experience happen, and I talk about it in the book. The chapter is called The Party. And what happened was a friend of mine was having this gathering. We were all going to meet at a restaurant, and we'd all have to kind of pitch in $50, and we're going to have this gathering. And I realized at that time that in order to go, I would have to break into my $1,000 cushion that I had been saving. It was so hard to hold on to this money. What's really interesting to me was that the decision to keep that $1,000 really did cause this explosion of realizations, lessons, and awarenesses that really did change my life, really did create the foundation for so many other lessons that led me to financial stability. And that's why I share this story in the book. So here's what happened. I looked at my finances and I thought, okay, I have this money in savings. I've been really just gritting my teeth, trying not to spend this money. I have bills coming in that I don't yet know how I'm going to pay, but I've made a decision that I'm not going to crack open that $1,000 cushion. I'm going to leave it in place, and I'm going to do all the uncomfortable things that are required to make sure my survival needs are met. I'm going to make lists, and I'm going to reach out to organizations, and I'm going to make phone calls, and I'm going to send emails, and I'm going to generate the money through my professional efforts to take care of my needs, and I'm going to leave my cushion intact. I'm not going to use it for the next $80 bill or the next $200 bill or the next $700 bill, which was the payment that I had to make every month during that time towards my debt that I was paying down. So I thought, I'm not going to use that $1,000 for any of that. I'm going to let that money stay in place as part of essentially my spiritual practice. I call it keeping a base balance. And I was kind of in this, it wasn't just hustle mode. It was like staying low to the ground, not making any sudden moves, being kind of quiet, not spending easily, not spending mindlessly, but being very deliberate. And so when this party came up, I had a conflict. First of all, I didn't want to admit that I didn't want to spend the money. It was $50. I was in my 40s, and I thought, this is going to sound ridiculous if I say, oh, I don't have the money right now to come. I'm so sorry. I'd love to come, but I don't have the money right now. The second piece of the problem in my head, the way that I was making sense of things was, well, I do have the money. I actually do have the money. I have the $50. So it wasn't that I didn't have the money. And so I kind of went back and forth, back and forth. I was dealing with embarrassment. I was dealing with conflict. I was dealing with wanting to go and knowing that technically I could go. I was dealing with feelings of betrayal, that I was betraying my commitment to myself. All of these things were just kind of swirling around in my head. And it wasn't like days on end I was thinking about it. I'm just sharing what was kind of floating through my head. As I was moving through my day doing other things, I was thinking about all these things, and all of these conflicting and contradictory thoughts and emotions were just kind of spinning around, in my head like clothes in the washing machine. It was like, what do I do here? And I kind of put off making a decision about it for a while. But I think somewhere deep down inside, I understood that I shouldn't crack open that savings and I shouldn't take that $50 out. Eventually, I did. I cracked open the savings. I took the $50 out. I went to the party. I felt terrible about cracking open my savings, but I justified it. And what happened was what always happened, which was once the seal was broken, because that's kind of how it felt to me, like a vacuum sealed kind of bundle of money that I had that I was holding on to for months and months and months. And once the seal was broken, it was like, well, I already got the $50 out, might as well pay this other bill. And slowly the $1,000 just kind of ebbed away, evaporated, and I repeated the pattern that I always repeated. When I came down to basically double digits again, I was in the midst of my own process of inquiry, self-discovery, curiosity, and thankfully, I said to myself, okay, Bridge, you messed up. And you knew you were messing up while you were messing up. So what is this about? And I somehow found, just kind of scrounged together enough courage to ask myself that question rather than just, collapsing into this kind of self critical powerlessness where it's like, I can never do this. I just thought, okay, no, curiosity, not powerlessness. Now let's ask some questions. What did I say to myself when I was making those choices? What did I say to myself? What was I thinking? What was I feeling inside? What I came up with was really a turning point for me. What I was saying to myself was, gosh, well, it's only $50. It's only $50. I have $1,000. I'll just take the $50 out and I'll put it back later. That's what I was saying to myself. And at the time, it seemed innocent enough. But when I really pushed back on that logic, that faulty logic, what I realized was, oh, if I could just come up with the $50 to put it back later, why couldn't I just come up with the $50 to go to the party? It was a really interesting question. If I could just come up with the money and put it back later, why not just come up with the money and use it for what I needed right now? And the answer was, it wasn't that easy for me to come up with the $50. And, the more that I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't just about the $50. $50 is always attached for me as a self-employed person to a larger bundle of income and responsibilities. So it wasn't so much about coming up with $50. It was about coming up with the next project, which would more likely be, $2,500 at that time, or $3,000 or $1,500 or whatever it was. It wasn't about coming up with $50. It was about generating income. The other thing I learned from that experience was that point where you say, oh, I don't have the money, but your logical mind knows that you do have the money. I had to, again, kind of pull apart these ideas that were fused together. I had to kind of take a closer look and zoom in on the assumptions I was making because I was confusing myself. I did have the $50 actually. So it turned out that this was not so much about not having $50. It was about the timing. And it just sent me on this whole exploration of really taking a closer look at how timing works in my relationship with money. So the way I describe it, I think about money as someone who's not an economist, but has the interests and kind of passions about behavioral economics that some other people might have, but not having that background, having the background of being a writer and, kind of artsy, poetic person. The way that I looked at it was, during this point in my ecological financial cycle, during this point in the month where this party came up, or it wasn't even in the month, just in my cycle, because my cycle doesn't always work on a 30-day schedule or a bi-weekly schedule like, people who get paychecks have. It's kind of different because my receivables and my income don't go according to a 2-week schedule. But in any event, during this point in my cycle, my ecological financial cycle, I was holding on to $1,000. I was pushing past my passivity, my fears, my feelings of insecurity around generating income. I was reaching out to new potential clients. I was dealing with my feelings of wanting to remain invisible. I was dealing with my feelings of replaying past failures in my head. And I was pushing through all of this resistance to generate the income required to let me leave my savings in place. Now, I'm giving words to this experience now, but at the time it was just kind of like scuba diving underwater and everything's just wavy and blurry. It was like just kind of wading through life. It didn't feel anything like I had the clarity that I have now as I'm describing this to you. But I was just kind of figuring it out. But that's what was happening. I had the base balance. I had these bills coming in. I had ways to generate money that required me to step outside of what was comfortable. And then I had this kind of familial, and I call it familial even though it wasn't a family member, a kind of friend group, social peer group type of peer pressure experience of wanting to look good in front of my friends and go to this party and not admit, I can't do this right now. This $50 is going to throw me off. I couldn't do it. My pride wouldn't allow me to do it. I learned more important for me to look good than to be in integrity. I learned that. It was kind of an ugly lesson to learn at the time, but that's what I learned. It's more important for me to look good in front of my friends and my peers than it is for me to be honest and have the courage to say, I'm working on these things right now and I'd love to come, but I just can't make it. In hindsight, I think it would have been fine with them. I was the one who had this angst about doing that. And so I didn't do it. I just went, cracked open the savings, went to the party, felt really off balance about it, and continued to make questionable choices after that until the money was gone again. So the process of looking back on my self-talk, on my assumptions, on my feelings was what really, it pulled me through and pulled me out and into this other place where I had access to greater stability, where I had access to better choices, where I had, the wisdom now. I had the clarity now. I had the vision now to do something different. And so that's why in the book I speak so passionately about looking inward, cultivating curiosity, anchoring into self-efficacy, a la the 6 pillars of self-esteem definition. There are other psychologists and practitioners who talk about self-efficacy, but that was my doorway, the 6 pillars of self-esteem by Nathaniel Branden. So anchoring into all of that and really questioning my own behavior, moving out of this, why did I do this again, to, why did I do this again? And having that kind of curiosity about it instead of that, that's part of what helped me to see, it wasn't just about $50, was it? It's not that easy to replace the $50, is it? It's not the right time to do this, is it? The pieces that you're putting in place have not come to fruition yet, have they? The phone calls you're making have not resulted in new business yet, have they? The potential receivables that you'll be getting are not even material things yet, are they? These micro admissions, realizations, lines of thinking, wow, so fascinating. So that's what I mean by slowing down the video. That's what I mean by taking a closer look at what you're actually doing. That's what I mean. It's like we're always having these conversations with ourselves, but there's so much noise and so much chatter coming from outside that it's really hard to hear the nuances sometimes of the assumptions we're making and what we're actually saying to ourselves and what we're actually doing. I really learned a lot from that one seemingly insignificant experience of going to that party. It changed a lot for me, and I'm so grateful. I think we all have experiences like that all the time where we have a decision to make and we feel ourselves being pulled in different directions, whether because of pride, because of embarrassment, because of stubbornness, wanting to do something. And we know that the integrity is getting a little shaky. And at times, we may or may not have the strength to do what we feel deep inside is the right thing. But what I want to encourage you to do is, even when you fall short, investigate it. That's what saved me, I think. Not so much that I did the right thing all the time, but that when I didn't do the right thing for me, when I didn't really keep my promise to myself, I had the courage to look at it instead of just crumbling and thinking, "Oh my God, I'm never going to do this. I can't handle this." I thought, "Okay, let me take a closer look at what did I do here? What was this really about? What do I need to learn from this?" And that kind of investigative approach, I think, is part of what helps you become this new person. It helps to build that solid, strong foundation for moving forward.